Hello again and welcome to At the Podium with Manuel Amezcua. I am a financial advocate, a CEO, father, husband, and as all of you know by now, I'm a massive sports fan. I'm obsessed with encouraging people to dream and attack the unique vision that they have for their life so they can inspire others to do the exact same thing. We built this podcast to share the stories of high performers, their wins, losses, and lessons along the way, and we convert those into golden nuggets, golden coins, golden tickets that can help you get closer to your hopes and dreams. Folks, today my guest is Coach Dan MacLean. Since 1997, this gentleman has represented Detroit Country Day High School football, and he's taken it to the highest level 7 times, winning 2 state titles. He's one of the greatest coaches in high school football, not just in the state of Michigan, but in the entire country. Coach has mentored, poured into, and developed some of the greatest players at the NFL level. And today, we're going to unpack the story of his life, going all the way back to his childhood and preparing to celebrate his 40th year next year at Detroit Country Day. He's built an incredible story of his life, grounded in his and Molly's faith that they've passed on to their 5 beautiful children, building an empire of a family, and all with the eye on the prize of dominating the game of football. And today we get the chance to dive deeper behind the curtain to know the life of the Coach Dan MacLean. Get ready for a masterclass on faith, family, and football. We're going to open today's conversation inspired by my 8th grade football player, Atlas Kai Amezcua. So we're going to say, what's up, podcast family? Today, we're going to rip one. We are here with a man I met recently, and in recent years, I've known of him since I moved to the great state of Michigan 7 years ago. But I'm here with an incredible man, someone who laid an incredible foundation as an individual, as a husband, as a father, as a 4-decade coach, mentor, inspirer of young student athletes in the great state of Michigan. Dan MacLean today serves as the executive director of athletics and the head football coach at Detroit Country Day High School. Coach, it's a privilege.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
And I'm so glad that Jeremy kind of just kept pushing on me about this conversation that Detroit Country Day is just such a special place in the state of Michigan. And those sort of pushes and nudges I shared with you at the Blue and Gold event, that I was like, Coach, I've got to get you on the podcast. And I want to just unpack the story of your life. And I say this to Samantha, I say this to our children. There are a few who can just say, boy, that was such a life well lived. And you have one of those, and it's just really a blessing that you're here to share it today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. I feel so blessed to do what I have done for these past 40 years and even before, and to have all the stories of all the young men that I've been able to coach, to work at a place like Country Day as an athletic director, not just young men, but all the students.
Yes.
To have a great family. To be just so blessed, in my own family with I'm from a large family. My wife's from a very large family. I'm so thankful, and I don't know how quite to say this without, certainly don't want to be offensive, but it's just such a wonderful community to grow up. I don't know how you do that, in life without all the support and the tremendous, just wonderful people who are, looking to help, be advisors, be helpers. It's just a great situation. I feel so fortunate that I'm I'm here and had
Yeah.
40 years doing what I do. Financial wealth is one thing, certainly, but I feel like the spiritual and relationship wealth that I have is immeasurable. I'm very blessed.
And it just says everything about you that one of the first things you did when you walked in today was you shared this incredible bracelet that says faith and family, and it has Mrs. MacLean's name on it, Molly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can maybe just speak a tiny bit to that. There's so much behind the gesture, and yet that was the first gesture that you made this morning.
It's still somewhat emotional, but it is the greatest thing that ever happened to me, my wife. Just now here a little better than a year after her passing, I thank God for the blessing of her. I'm in awe of her wonder, her beauty inside and out, her tremendous faith. I I love talking about it, but invariably I get emotional about it. But God is good, and God smiled on me in that relationship, because just to give you a little bit of a background, I was one of these guys married and had tremendous passion for coaching and being involved, and it was full speed ahead. And I was getting up there in years, and had some relationships, but none of them that were going to pursue and go to the altar. And I thought, well, I'll just kind of be a bachelor and I'll go about my life and be a football, guy. And but I knew, based on my family, I'm one of 7 children, large family. I love children. Obviously, I worked with kids. It was a passion of mine. And then God put this unbelievable woman in my life. And there's, for me anyway, there was always a certain amount of nerves and things that came into play when in the dating scene and so. And with Molly, it just was so natural. So it was just right. I can remember my wedding day, people telling wedding stories, and I'm a high intensity person, and I had absolutely no nerves that day. And I felt like it was God telling me that this is absolutely the right thing, the right person, and our almost 30 years of wedded bliss on my end. I know I caused her a lot of heartache, but it was always that way. Just somebody that you love to come home to and wake up with in the morning, and she was great at putting me at ease and helping me with all the struggles in my life, and just an unbelievably great person. And I'm now here a little bit more than a year out, I'm in awe of her. I'm in awe of her faith. She started as a kindergarten teacher, and then she moved to 5th grade after we had our 5 children. Mm-hmm. And she taught religion and social studies at a Catholic school. And the kids that I meet who have been impacted by her, some at Country Day even, and they don't even know that I'm her husband. And they tell me things about Mrs. MacLean being the greatest teacher I ever had, and the person who taught me about my faith, and just was so inspiring to me. And there's just so many stories that they're very motivating, and yet, there's a deep hole with her being gone now, but she's the love of my life. She's the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I can imagine that, it left a hole for thousands of people, including your beautiful 5 children, Jack, Maureen, Mike, Kathleen, and Danny.
Yes. Yeah. They're helping me like you can't believe.
It's, I'm thankful that you drew a comparison between the significance of financial wellness, but the prioritized significance of a relationship with your faith and your family.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to, we're just ripping right into it, and I love this. So we're going to just ping pong a little bit today, if that's okay, because there's so much I want to get into. But can you speak a little bit to when, where, who planted that seed in your heart?
Yeah, I believe, I was very fortunate to be born into the family that I was. My dad just had a great gift of faith, and he was. I wouldn't say that he was not shy. It wasn't like he was over the top with it, but he lived it and set a great example, as did my mom. And I look at their union as something unbelievably special. My dad was, one of 6 children, went into the Korean War at age 17, came out, and my mom and dad had quite a love story. My mother was from a home where her dad died early at 45. My mother was the oldest of 3 children, and they had a very idyllic kind of a love story and got together. And I just feel like the bringing together of those 2 people was just a blessing that I thank God for as well every day. And, you see people who are couples who just play off each other's strengths so well. And my mom and dad were just incredible. We had, unfortunately, a tragedy in our family. One of my younger brothers, Tim, we had twins in my family, Tim and Tom. And at the age of 19, he was hit crossing a street up at the University of Michigan and was killed like literally, 100 yards from the U of M hospital. And just again, my father always said, you don't sometimes know what kind of faith you're going to have until it's truly tested. And it was tested. And my dad was just incredible, setting the example for the whole family. And my mother every day, just making sure all of us were all right. And it was a devastating time and a devastating loss. He was just an unbelievable young man. He was 19 years old. He was an all-state football player. He was one of the greatest twin combinations, Tim and Tom, my brothers, dynamic guys, both of them. And to lose him, at the right at that stage in his life was very difficult, but we made it through. And I believe through the direction of my folks, it made our family stronger, if that's possible. And just a great example. And, my wife always said this, we have our family saints, and we do. We have people looking out for us from heaven. I feel that way now about her, but I've always felt that way about my brother Tim, guiding us, helping us. And, just the role of faith in your life. And again, and just kind of leading you and helping you and directing you. And I think it had a tremendous impact on me. And I had, I had played for a guy by the name, you may know him, Manny, but he was a legendary high school coach here in Michigan, Al Fracassa at Brother Rice.
I know the name.
And another great man, another great example of faith and, caring and investing in young people and their struggles. And I just can't thank God enough for that. And there's several, there's others too. My freshman coach is probably one of the greatest coaches, a guy by the name of Dave Yeager, who played for Coach Fracassa when he was at Shrine High School. And
Dave Yeager,
unbelievable guy. Just, he was one of those people, I say, he kind of discovered me. He saw in me things I didn't know. And made me the freshman of the captain at the Brother Rice freshman football team when it was a heady group. My grade school team was lousy. I was the best player, but we were lousy. And I came to Rice where it was all these hot shots, and I literally didn't think I was going to make the team. And out of that, Dave Yeager recognizes me and sets me on a course for what I'm doing now. It's just those people in your life. And I'm so thankful for him and Coach, my family. As I said, I could go on and on here, but it's wonderful. I feel very blessed to be where I am.
When you described Coach Yeager there, I've got to just plug this in because Coach B is literally one of my favorite humans in Michigan, Coach Bonkowski.
It's awesome.
I mean, I'm like, there's no way that this guy brings more energy and intensity than I do at times. And I met him and I was like, I want to play for you.
Yeah.
And to focus that gift
it's great
on young boys that are 11, 12, 13 years old. I mean, I think about like the things that, the evolution of the young man, and like, they're just starting to wear deodorant, for God's sake. And this guy is literally getting them ready to go into like this Spartan war.
Yeah, no, it is
every week.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's that the definition of the it factor.
Oh,
you don't know what it is, but it's there. And Matt definitely has that. His sidekick, Ryan Dunleavy, has it.
Oh, love Coach Dunn.
And I mean, we just to give you a quick sidelight about Dave Yeager. So Dave Yeager's buddy from Shrine High School was a guy named Mickey Brzezinski, and they went to college together.
He just sounds menacing.
Mickey went over to Divine Child and coached their freshman team. And, at the time, Brother Rice and Divine Child were huge rivals.
Yeah.
Gary Danielson, he went to Divine Child, and a guy named Gary, and they had great people there. Bill McCartney, who coached at Colorado.
Oh, sure. Of course.
But so we go in as freshmen. We don't know, our right from our left. And we start into our double sessions, and Dave and his good friend are coaching, and they're going to coach each other in the first game of the season. And from day one, he starts pounding into our heads, I will not lose to Mickey Brzezinski. I will not lose. And we were like, completely, he took over our minds, and we absolutely went out and destroyed them, and ended up, they beat us in our last game, our senior year. But that was just, those stories like a Coach B. You just never forget that guy.
Totally.
And the intensity and the passion, and like, where does this guy get this? And,
yes.
But I want it. I love it. It's like, feeds you. And my wife always used to say that about me. She, it was kind of her code for telling me to calm down. But it was like, hey, I love the passion. But it was like,
yeah,
you got it going here. And she was very easygoing and calm and very helpful to me. But, I could get revved up, and, I love that quality. I mean, I respond to it. That's who I am. And that's why I think I've loved, being a coach all these years and coaching all the guys that I have now. And they'll always be kids to me, but seeing them as adults, like Jeremy, like Mo, like some of these guys that you've had the good fortune to speak to, and the list just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, Jonas is literally flying in right now. Jonas Gray's flying into Detroit right now, and obviously sends his regards. And just like, to know, like, to know the types of young men and all student athletes, because I mean, it's not like the school's divided where, I mentioned, Ava to you, and so to have that type of impact and influence on the future leaders of this country,
I think it
matters.
No doubt. I think it's one of the great things, too, about Country Day. I feel like the founder was a visionary in having all the kids participate in athletics.
Yeah, say more about that. I'm glad. And we're going to hop around a lot because I want to go back to your childhood, but say more about that.
I just think that, it forces you out of your comfort zones in many cases, and things you're going to find out about yourself that you would have never known otherwise. Not just about yourself, but like about individuals you're going to be exposed to, coaches, teachers, but your fellow teammates. People like at a Country Day, you never would have probably met that person other than you were on a team with them. And from that, it's just been unbelievable, the growth that I see. I've got 5 of my own kids who experienced that, and the friendships that they made. I see it as the football coach when we go up to Camp Happy, and guys get in a cabin together who would have otherwise never met. Yeah. And they become great friends. We have a little tradition, like a lot of schools, where our seniors get up and speak at the banquet at their end of their senior year. Mm-hmm. And inevitably, it doesn't have a lot to do with wins and losses and championships. There's some mention of that, but it's about the guys they met. Yeah. And a lot of it is what happened at Camp Happy when they were freshmen. And I met these guys in this place and like the most uncommon, unusual kind of relationships. And these guys they're locked together for life now. They've made a connection. And I love that about Country Day. I love it to death. People often talk about, the Alumni Association and everything, but it's a very unique group, but they stay up with each other. I had guys 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whenever we won our last, guys from the 85, 86 teams getting together to watch the game together, wherever they were in the country, and telling
Yes.
me, Coach, we're all together, we're watching this. We can't tell you how great we feel and how proud we are. And I'm like, that's unbelievable. This is so great. That makes my whole day. I just, the glow was incredible. Just wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, you've played in 7 state championships, won multiple state championships. There is great pride, knowing that was a chapter in someone's life. Yeah. And you just feel the energy. I mean, I remember when Samantha and I first walked through the Hall of Honor or Champions, and I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
The high school I went to had 1 trophy case.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a nearly 100-yard long hallway.
Yeah.
Connecting buildings that just reflect excellence over decades and decades and decades.
No, it's fantastic. And that whole idea and concept is a tribute to Ross Cooper and Dan Luft, my associates, and those guys are outstanding, but they have a vision. I'm not that artistic and creative, but that was just a great thing. And it is, it's kind of walking history there. And you just see that was an incredibly exciting time, I would say, from, probably, when I started at Country Day, I absolutely love it, but it was a lot different. But probably from the early 90s for the next 10, 15 years, it was just an incredible period of just unbelievable growth of the school, but growth of the athletic program, the success in so many sports. And I would say it rivals anything anywhere in that little time frame. And then you see the impact for the kids who all participated on those teams, guys, girls, our Country Day Hall of Fame, which opened last year, and just a great ceremony. But probably the greatest part of it was when they had the Q&A session that went back and forth with, Chris Webber and Shane Battier and, Charles Johnson and Peggy Evans and, Jennifer, just talking about their experiences, not just as athletes, but in the school and the demands that the teachers put on them. And, there was no slack in you because we want your best. We want you to be exceptional. We want, and, it's just, I feel now, I get goosebumps talking about it. It's wonderful, wonderful place.
Can we go back to your childhood for a moment?
Sure thing.
Share a little bit with our listeners about how you ended up at Brother Rice.
Okay.
Maybe speak to your childhood prior to that, leading up to that, and what it was like maybe growing up in those times compared to what you see these young men and women growing up in today, and then connect that to Brother Rice. And I want to talk about you playing sports in high school.
Yeah. I think it was a time where, there, obviously in my time, families were larger. I mean, we had, as I mentioned, 7 kids, and we weren't that far out of the norm. There was most families had 4 and 5 kids, and I went to high school with a guy who had 18 in his family, a guy that I played with. And so I think there was a little more orientation. I just remember, Catholic schools being full and busting. And, my school, St. Bede, which was at the corner of 12 and Southfield now, is no longer. It's a strip mall and, has apartments on it. But my orientation, I failed to mention this, but I wrote a paper in 3rd grade, and it said I was somehow going to work this double occupation. I was going to become a priest and be a football player. And one of the lines my mother used to just laugh about was like, yeah, I'm going to say mass and then I'll whip down to the stadium and put the big rush on, because I was always a little guy, and I played with the bigger guys, and they made you rush because that way you couldn't get in anybody's way. Yeah. And that was my deal. And my mother, would pull that out. I have it now because after my mom passed, I have that type of thing. But I think those things, influenced my life tremendously. I feel very fortunate to have them. Wasn't always, peaches and cream. I could be a little bit rambunctious, as I said, and I got into some, disciplinary issues, but nothing too bad, and always had great mentors to pull me back. And I just feel, like I said, the path that I had was a great time. And, I think we all do a little bit of nostalgia and think back to the time when you were doing it. It was the greatest ever. But I have to say, I think, Coach Fracassa and Brother Rice were kind of like up and coming at that point and creating what would later be just a dynasty, and, being kind of somewhat on the ground floor, kind of in at least the beginning part, the end of the beginning part. It's just, I sit here now all these years later and feel so blessed, and I still have him, he's still around, so I still have contact with him. I just feel, very fortunate for my childhood. My parents had their priorities right in my mind. We were never without, but we were never, lived lavishly, but the faith and the family and those things were the priority. And
yes.
I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful to God for that. And I just feel so blessed, and to have my siblings now, especially at these in a difficult time, we have something that's tremendously solid. And I wish for that for other people, though. When I see things that in today's world, where I see, these beautiful, wonderful kids, and some of them don't have all that good fortune that I had growing up, it kind of makes my heart, bleed a little bit. And it's something that, hopefully I can help impact in a positive way by being involved in these people's lives and being an example and being somebody who's, worth following. And,
Well, you absolutely have been. So I was going to follow up with the question of which sport was your first love, but I now understand that
oh my God,
it was clearly football.
Yeah.
Because if you're writing in third grade that you're going to say mass and whip down to the stadium to put the big rush on, it was like, you were locked in. That's 8 years old.
No, I think it definitely, I wasn't, I was a decent athlete. Baseball was prominent. My dad was a huge baseball guy. I was a pretty decent sized guy for my age, and I couldn't hit a lick, and it drove my father crazy. But some of my brothers could really hit, and my dad was always like, "What? You look great in your uniform. What are you doing?" Which probably kicked me on over. I loved basketball for a time. I got involved with basketball late in grade school, and I really loved it. But football was always my love and remains my love. And I just think the adrenaline rush that I get from football, and the wonderful thing that's good is that, it's not just as a player. It continued in the passion for coaching. I knew, I didn't have a great college career, great college experience after a tremendous high school experience, and I still had that passion. And through the vehicle of coaching, I got to live that passion, and yes. I still have it today. And I've said, I know it'll be time to come out, to get out of coaching when I don't feel that adrenaline rush. But when it gets close to kickoff time and, you're just in that environment and that atmosphere, it's just the greatest thing in the world. And the rush is tremendous. And then even afterward, when you're kind of coming down, there's a kind of a relaxation and anything that you just don't experience in other forms of life,
yes.
in your day to day. It's somewhat like a drug. I don't know. I love it so much. And I just feel so fortunate that I've been able to be around the game all these years. I love the game. I love what it teaches you. How to deal with your fears and anxieties and all those things. And I just think there's so many life lessons that come out of it. And and now I get to sit back here at 66 years old and see all these players that I've had the benefit to coach and see the young men that they are and the people that they are. That's not just exclusive to football. I'm most familiar with football, but like you say, the young ladies now that I've had to watch in Country Day in my role as the athletic director. It's wonderful, and now welcome them back and have them come into the Hall of Fame or have them come back and speak to our students about their life. You can't beat it. You can't beat it.
When you communicate, it's almost like watching a movie.
Yeah.
It's it's very granular, it's very descriptive, and it's easy to see why you might inspire people. You know, I still believe very passionately that stories are what connects us and inspire us to pursue, you know, more. You know, to know like maybe I can do more.
Yeah.
My gut tells me you can vividly recall the locker room at Brother Rice.
Everything.
What's the difference between that locker room 50 years ago and the locker room you're coaching today? Draw some comparisons.
Yeah, I think I just feel like, you know, it was a simpler time. I think it might have been easier to, you know, I had a dynamic person in our coach, but to get your attention. And, you know, I was at an all-boys Catholic school, you know, and, you know, it was, you know, I think those guys, the people who were good at it understood, you know, young men and knew how to discipline them and how to get them into line. And I think that is a little bit more of a challenge these days because there's so many things coming at our youth, you know, that we weren't, I think, fortunately, in some cases, not exposed to at that early of an age. But now you've got all that and the distraction that some of it is and the, you know, the shortening of the attention, you know, everything's got to be in kind of a sound bite and you can't exceed that because you risk losing them in certain ways. Not to say that they're not intelligent and super, they're unbelievable, you know, like hey, I can't do any of this technology. Thank God for my children who've been exposed to it, and you know, my wife who was helpful to me. But I just am amazed at all the things that they do. But I sometimes just sit back and say, is that age appropriate? Is that in their best interest? Is, you know, some of the things that we got through the relationships, through the instruction, through the hands-on with these significant people in our lives, is that a trade-off in some cases that we're kind of missing? I sometimes lament, you know, when I go by the commons room at school and I see everybody in there bunched in like they've always been in all my time at Country Day, sitting on top of each other, but they've got this out, you know, and they're looking at that rather than, you know, communicating with one another and going in depth with the people, which is, again, why I say that Camp Happy experience in the cabins is great. Because, you know, their tech doesn't work in the cabin. You know, you gotta get real. You gotta get real with these guys in the cabin. And, you know, there's a spot out on the road where most of them go to call their parents and call their girlfriends more, you know, at the night. And then, you know, it's bed check, we go. And then, you know, then the fun begins in the cabins. But, you know, it's, I don't know if that, Manny, if that's a loss of innocence a little bit or something, you know, or just exposure to so many things that these kids have to deal with that, you know, I think probably it was a good thing that I didn't have to deal with those. You know, they all come soon enough. Life happens, you know.
It's, you know, I appreciated that comment. I often think, as I observe Avon Atlas, it's easy for me to default to, wow, in my childhood, we took one vacation my entire life. It was to Wisconsin Dells. You know, we lived in the Chicago area and it was the Wisconsin Dells, and that was it, okay? Yeah. We lived in a one-car household, in a one-bathroom household with a bunch of boys.
Isn't that great?
You know, we walked, rode bikes, took buses a lot. And so it's really easy for me to sometimes when I'm out of alignment with something Ava and Atlas think or are doing, for me to say, oh my gosh, look at the privilege they have. You know, they're at this school and have this, and they can, you know, send a note to their uncle Jeff Bezos and have the cleats here by tomorrow morning, which is a joke. He's not an uncle, but you think he would be because he gets a lot more love notes than any other family member I know, right? The Amazon is at our house every day.
Unbelievable.
But you said something that really resonated with me, which is, it's not your words, my words. It's more complicated.
I think so.
The environment that they're growing up in. It's more complicated
because of technology, because of distractions, because of almost like the ease of access to information that could be very detrimental.
I agree.
To someone's life.
I think, in the academic realm and in the school realm where I'm, like the cerebral, the development of the brain, can they handle it? I just think of my wife and I always talk about decision making with our children. Are they making good decisions? Well, at certain ages, they don't because they're not ready to. They've got to have that life experience. They've got to go through things and happen. And I just worry, like to your point, is some of that sped up so much, and then you do something at a very young age or with inexperience that it's really hard to kind of work your way through and get out of that. I worry about that, and I worry about the advisors and the people that these young people have to go to. Like where are they coming from? Are they have their the best interests in mind, or is profit and things like that overtaking some of the the values that are so important to kids as they grow and learn to navigate their world. I don't know. I have concern about it. I've got all these nieces and grandnieces and nephews now, and I pray for them in their world. Like I want the very best for them. I feel like I was so blessed. I want that for them.
Yes.
So.
Well, and the expectations of parents have evolved, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I still vividly remember my high school football coach grabbing me by the chest and the throat, pinning me against his garage for a comment I made about a teammate that really was a comment the coach should make. It was accurate, but it's the coach's job to say it.
Yeah.
And I said it to the team captains. And I came home and I was so upset. And I tell my father, and my father said, well, what did you do to deserve that?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it was necessary.
Yeah.
Like, did you learn from it?
Yes.
And that was it. That was the end of the discussion.
Your parents took the the authority side, and it wasn't necessarily your side all the time in an advocate role. It was like, understand what happened.
There's authority.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the expectations of parents have evolved quite a bit from those days.
I think you're right. I think, like parents have, the world has, gone through such change. And, I always, you always heard the thing, both my parents were depression children, but that was real. That was getting along with less, and and your priorities, and I mean, we live in a wonderful country. We've got so many great gifts and blessings, but part of that is you got to manage that. You got to learn how to live with that and live in it. And so then I believe that the people who are, in the role of guiding you and advising you and being responsible for you, and you're accountable to, they have to be, people of good character.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah,
well said. College. I mean, you played at the University of Illinois.
Yeah.
At a time when that place was just feared. I mean, there were some teams plus or minus 10 years the time you were there that had some of the best players that played at the next level.
It was, I mean, we in my time there, I played 5 seasons. I got injured my freshman year, but I played in the program for 5 years, and my first year was the best year, and we weren't very successful. We had 3 head coaches. I came in under a gentleman named Bob Blackman. Then I played for Gary Moeller, who people from, he obviously went on to be the head coach at University of Michigan. Yeah. He was Bo Schembechler's defensive coordinator when he came to us. And then I played under a gentleman, Mike White, for 1 year. And Mike White was kind of a protege of Bill Walsh in the West Coast offense. And he ended up, he did a little stint as the Oakland Raiders coach, but all very different. Yeah. And unfortunately, you have an expectation coming from a program and the success that I experienced in high school where you think I'm going to the next level, and it never quite materialized. While it was a life experience that I'll never forget, and it contributed obviously to who I am, and I loved it. I still loved it, even as hard as it was. But it was difficult, but you know, it was a great place. I have great friends. As I told you, I'm looking forward to going back this year and seeing my son, who plays at Central Michigan, go down there and just see the place. I've heard it's changed unbelievably since I was there. I left there in 1980.
Very commercialized today, right? It's
Yeah.
just a whole
Have you
city
been?
in
I'm
a
sure
city.
you've been down. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what one of my roommates has 5 children as well, and I think 3 or 4 of them went to U of I, and he said,
wow.
"You will not believe it.
Yeah.
You will not believe it." And so I'm kind of curious. I really regret that Molly, my wife, never got down there with me, because, you know, it's such a part of my life. And, you know, my kids kid me and say, "Dad, she was in high school then." You know?
Yeah. That's right.
I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's the proper perspective, I guess. But, you know, you want to, I shared so much with her, and I think you could tell I'm one of these people that's like you said, granular, and Molly was great and very accepting of listening to that. But like, she was to be like, okay, let's move on, you know?
Yes. But I should have probably stated that a little bit differently, because I did know that, you know, during the time you were there was a time of, I think, turnover in the most significant role, right? And it's tough to put up a win-loss record that everybody's proud of when the philosophy, the mindset, the coaching style, the communication varies so much in such a short window of time. But there's some incredible football players that came out of there 10 years, you know, in that 15, 20-year window.
Unbelievable.
Where you were right in the middle.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit to what it was like to have this sort of like distant sort of relationship with guys like Dick Butkus? And others. I mean, I remember seeing Mr. Butkus a couple times because of his nephews, Zach and Luke, that I've been friends with for a long time. And it was literally like the president was walking into the tailgate.
No doubt. No, I again, you know, you talk about in awe, like just growing up in the era that I did when, you know, the NFL was taking shape, and then his impact. And actually going one of the first Lions game that I saw, so I would have been 7 or 8. My uncle took me, and Dick Butkus and Gale Sayers were rookies. And at one point, Dick Butkus' helmet came off. He'd, you know, been in a tangle, and he came out with the ball, and he was shaking it. And you saw this guy, and it was like, oh my goodness, that guy is absolutely scary. But then, you know, his legend kind of began, and then, you know, I always look at it like, how did I end up going there? You know, and I was a linebacker, and I was like, Dick Butkus, you know, it was just like an idol. And then I get down there, and I think a couple of years, maybe 2 years behind me was Mark Butkus, his brother Ron's son, who I played with.
Yes.
And to your point, I got to see him once. We had a team chaplain. I think I might have told you this about Father Duncan, who was there forever.
Yes.
And he was there when Dick Butkus was there. So, like, you know, at least almost spanned at least 20 years. And I think he was a part of the Duncan Hines fortune because he drove a big Eldorado. He was there forever. But off in the corner, Father Duncan used to come out to practice once in a while. You saw this hulking figure in this black coat and everything, and you didn't even have to, you know, get up close just by the way he walked and the way it's Dick Butkus, you know. Yes. And I was just like, I can just remember being like, I you know, at that time I didn't even approach him because I would have been speechless, but you know, just amazing. That, you know, just that guy. And then, you know, this year's been, I told my people that we're going down to see in the fall for the game, I said, this is the year of Butkus since he passed away. I said, right. You know, we're going to have our shrine. I guess they've got a huge statue out in front of the stadium of him now. And so I feel like, you know, while it wasn't glamorous, I you know, did have at least a connection to the school, and it was great. You know, you get to this station in your life, you don't have any regret. Those were all great experiences for me. I loved it. I loved my time there. Met great people.
You start coaching at Detroit Country Day High School in 1985. Here we are 39 years later.
Yeah. What a great, and just kind of a fluke I went over and I'd come home from college and I got into coaching youth, Little League football. My youngest brother, Matt, played. Turns out Joe D'Angelo's son, Joey, played, who was the head coach at Country Day at the time. This was in the early 80s. Several other kids who would later play for me, I didn't know at the time, but they're on this team. And a mutual friend's son is also on the team. He was a guy who played with Joe at the University of Detroit. So Joe and John Everly is the person, but they played together on the last football team at University of Detroit Mercy in 1964. And just great guys. And John's the guy who was Coach Fracassa's captain at Shrine. And, I got going and, everybody, I always tell people what I had was a ton of passion and a ton of enthusiasm, not much knowledge. I didn't know what I was doing coaching wise, but I had that in spades. And so, got wind of it, and John kind of promoted me. I kept counsel with Coach Fracassa, and he said, if you can get in and coach at the high school level, it'd be great for you, and all that type of thing. And so this opportunity came, and I think I was one of the very first, we term it now in the athletic department, outside coaches, because Country Day at that time was much smaller, and all the teachers, just like the students had to participate, all the teachers, regardless of if they knew about sports or not, they all had to coach. It was a teacher-coach deal. And so I was one of the first guys from outside, we had a larger team, and I came in, and I think people, for lack of a better term, liked my enthusiasm. You explained like Bonk. I probably was a version of Bonk in my time, Bonkowski. And, they're like, well, what are we going to do? Let's see if we can get somehow, some way for this guy to come in. So I worked for 8 years as an outside coach. And then they offered me the position of the athletic director as well to come in. And I turned it down. And my predecessor, went for 3 years, and his son played football for us and played at DePauw, Jimmy Fasella.
Oh, really?
And but then that didn't work out, and I was in the insurance business. I was with Liberty Mutual, and they came back to me, and they said, "Would you reconsider this?" And I absolutely wanted to do it. And then my mother was like, I don't know that you'll ever make any money at that. I don't think, your parents. And I was just dead set. I said, I have to do this. I have to do this. I'll regret it the rest of my life if I don't go for this opportunity to be involved at Country Day. And I did it. And, certainly the good Lord has smiled on me. And so I took that job in 92 to become the athletic director as well as the coach. I met Molly very shortly around that area, and I bought a house. So I got married, I changed jobs, and I, very shortly after, we were expecting a child, and it was just the greatest thing. I just look back at it now, it was crazy. I bought a house too, and it was awesome. I couldn't ask for more. I truly blessed,
Those are the kinds of financial planning clients we love. The ones that are just like, I'm a freight train. I'm gonna get one shot on earth. I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna take counsel from my parents and my siblings and my priests. But at the end of the day, I'm still gonna execute the playbook in my head.
Amen. Amen. I think that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I'll tell you another cute story. I love telling this story. So my dad, through our lives always said, if you can find a gal like mom, marry her, So anyway, I got, as I told you, I had a period where I really wasn't seeing anybody exclusively or dating or anything. And then I met Molly, and, things took off. We were on a fast track. And so I met my father one morning at Mass, and he came in and he said, hey, seem like you're kind of head over heels, and, let's slow this thing down and get a little bit of a perspective on it. And I knew where the message was coming from. It was coming from MOM. She sent her emissary to come in. And I said, I remember this distinctly. I said, Dad, do you remember what you always told us? I said, if you find a gal like Mom, marry her. with that, he turned around, he said, enough said, and he walked out, and we were good. And
God bless him.
The rest is history. It was great. It was a great, again, like I explained to you about my wedding day with no nerves, it was just, the right thing. It was the right thing at the right time, and truly inspired by God, I believe.
Can we talk about coaching philosophies and experiences briefly?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've always been fascinated with understanding how such a powerful and respected tenured coach adjusts his or her style to being a steward to the 1% to 2% elite athletes versus everyone else.
Yeah.
Has there been a difference for you? Is there a way that you adjust your intensity or the way you communicate with someone that you're just like, this kid was just literally born to play the sport? He or she was born to play, and the others truly need very granular tactical instruction.
Yeah, I think there's obviously some truth to that. That's just in, dealing with individuals in life. I think, you got to kind of meet them where they are. But I think the ability then that I have been around so many people, particularly my high school coach, was to meld that into a team. That is the challenge in my mind. So how can you get that individual that you just spoke of, who is that gifted individual who is meant to do this, and get him to buy into the team concept? If, some of them are more so than others, but to get that and to make it work. And I've had experiences throughout my career where I can remember doing too much of that to the detriment of our teams, and making a mental note to say, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to sacrifice the team for this one individual. And that's very rare that that's happened to me, but those are good lessons for you as you go through. And I'm now in my role as athletic director with young coaches who come to me. I can, provide that, just insight. Everybody's got to go through their own experience. I get that. But I think the whole idea is, I love also the concept about Country Day. It's a team environment. Everything is a team sport. As individual as some of the sports are, it's still a team. Tennis I look to, and certain sports, track, where it's just the clock, it seems to be. But at Country Day, you're part of a team. We've still got to somehow put a team together in that environment. So I think that is the challenge. But the greatest situation is when you get that individual who is absolutely blessed and is totally bought into the team concept. And, we've had, you mentioned Jonas. Jonas Gray was just unbelievably gifted, unbelievable, built, looked like a man at, 14 years old, just, and yet, he had some areas to improve on. But one of the things he did, he was an unbelievable spokesman. He went out. He believed in football. He was the guy who got Benny Fowler to come play football. Benny was a basketball player. Yes. He just believed so much in what he was doing and had so much passion. Come and join us. This is great. We're going to have this team, Yes. And I love that passion. And Jonas could be, very strong will and at times hard to coach. And, we had some, friction, not very long, but it was all about, getting these guys to come of age and understand what the process was like. And, I'm sure, people that I talked to at his college experience at Notre Dame, same type of thing that he went through to have, just a great career by the end of it all. And, but that I think is the real test of coaching. The X's and O's are what they are. But, the culture of your team and how everybody comes together and how successful you are at that really at the end of the day determines how what kind of success. I'm just, that's what I'm so impressed about Dan Campbell with.
Oh my! Oh,
that I just am blown away by that, and he came to our father's son. I have not had the opportunity to meet him yet, but that's what you hear about, and that is what shines through when you hear him talk. When you hear the players talk about him, it's still that. It's still that. Now, again, these guys got to know a ton of stuff, and it's particularly quarterbacks and secondary and all that type of thing. But at the end of the day, it's how well can you be a team player? How well do you play for your teammates? That is, to me, that's the great thing about the game. That's what it teaches you.
For these 8th graders that are getting ready to go to Camp Happy, I can't tell if Atlas and his buddies are excited or anxious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, both.
Yeah, right? What should they know is the tone at the top when they make a commitment to play football at Country Day at the high school level? What's the tone at the top?
I think the tone at the top is to invest in the experience. Don't dip your toe in the water, dive in, and really, go full go. Because, the worst thing in life, as we all experience, is that regret of thinking I could have done more. What could I have done? I don't want to leave something on the table. And, you'll see it, but we see the young kids, and, football is such a great game in that aspect too. It isn't all about your talent. It's about your willingness to go and invest in the experience and just, kind of lay it on the line. And, Manny, I have to tell you, I love that so much about my Country Day experience, particularly when I started, where I came from with 100 boys on the football team at Brother Rice, in the heyday of all these kids and boys, to come into Country Day, where we were lucky to have 30, and seeing some of these kids who had no idea how to put their stuff on. Yeah. And then those guys go out on the field and they play with the same passion that the best football players you ever did, and they play for their teammates, and they play for their school, and they have such pride. That's what I love about football too. I just love that. I have some, we had a bunch of, guys from India on our first team playing guard. They didn't know football, and they would give you everything that they had and lay it on the line, and they took such pride in it. And to see, the joy when they experienced it was I'm coming from pretty much, it's all Catholic, and it's, mainly, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity at the time that I went to my high school, and now here it is. And it's just, it just reaffirms your faith in people, in the world, in humanity. I just love that about it. I feel what a vehicle, what a great vehicle. There's a book that I'm reading right now. It's I got to go see Bill Curry. Do you know Bill Curry? And it's called The 10 Men You Meet in the Huddle. Yeah. And it kind of goes through, he's a guy from the South, from the pre-60s South. And it just goes through all the different relationships, he had never been with an African-American person, and he thought for sure they were going to, get rid of him when he came to the Green Bay Packers. And Willie Davis showed him, such kindness and care and love. And, just it goes through a lot of those situations. He talks about Nitschke trying to kill him,
He treated everybody that way, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But those are the stories that my family looks at me. It's like, you're reading another football book? And I said, no, it's a life book,
I've said this 100 times. I'm so glad you said that. 100 times, probably 10,000 times. I have found that sport in competition is simply just one of the greatest preparers and teachers and mentors for life. And I look back at, my very mediocre football life, but boy, I'll tell you, learning to shut down your ego was one of the greatest lessons I learned playing football into college. Learning to, control that inner voice that says you deserve better, you deserve different, you deserve anything other than what you're being given the opportunity for. That was so powerful. Learning to accept accountability from another man other than my father. Learning, you said it, and to me, I still think we talk about this in the firm all the time. This is what it looks like to be a great teammate. You got to play for more than just yourself. And boy,
talk about the greatest virtue of all, which is humility. And it is such a hard one. I mean, even, like if you think you've got that virtue, that's probably a problem. Because it's just one of those things that you never can
I'm
stop.
humble.
Yeah, you can never stop working at. It's going to talk to the boys here in a little bit about next year. We're going to meet, and I just think about, it's not. I love this. Can't remember what scene it's from. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And I just I love it. But it's just one of those quests that you go on, and that is just like, that true humility that team can teach you. And my dad always said, when you think you're flying high, get ready, because something's coming that's going to knock you right on your butt, and you're going to have to go deal with it. I also would say that is some of the vision of Mr. Shaw, the founder of Country Day. Mm-hmm. To realize that athletic experience is going to teach you things that you will not get in the classroom. There's lessons to be learned, humility amongst them, how to accept success and, have grace, and to do this, how to accept defeat, how to, go over and say, I was wrong. I screwed up. I'm sorry the way that I treated. One of the things that I do, and I do it personally, but with the leaders on our team, you're the captain. And, some guys think that that's the old drill sergeant model, do what I tell you and get in there. And I said, okay. But then you got to go back to that guy, and you have to find him when he's doing exactly what you've asked of him, and you got to recognize him, and you got to develop a rapport, and he's got to know how much you care about him. That way it works. The other way, when it's just yelling and screaming, and the ability for you to learn that skill kind of depends a lot on how your culture and your program is going to go too. So, but.
Yeah, powerful comments, and I love that. I love that you did talk about that, because that is one of the things that I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. Is I think there's an art to being influential with student athletes today.
Amen.
And you just alluded to a little bit of it, which is create, and again, not your words, my words, but the way I'm hearing them, and we'll take them forward in my life. But be simple and clear with the expectations so that they're understood, versus a control and demand environment, which is kind of like what I think I grew up in, and it was appropriate for that time.
Yeah.
But then make sure that you always come back and recognize them in those unexpected moments, so that it really is meaningful to them, and that they know that you see them.
Show them you love them. Show them you care. And you made the example of Matt. I think about our hockey coach, Frank Novak. And Frank is as old school as they come. And initially when you meet Frank, you're not quite sure where you stand with him.
I've not had the privilege yet, but I look forward to it.
And then you go to his banquet at the end of the season, and you see the love that these guys have, because that hard-nosed, guy, he's only doing it because he believes that's going to make you better, and he cares and he loves you. And he's just, again, that's some of the benefit of what I get to work with, the people that I meet. And, nobody's the same. Nobody's a cookie cutter. Everybody's got their, and that's, I think, one of the points. Don't do it the way I did it, because you're not me. Do it your way. Do it the right way. But I'm going to give you some, I'll give you some guidelines. I'll try to help you, which I hope you would mention to me too. I've got, the guys who I work with, I've told you, I'm Mr. Non-Technology. It's humbling. These guys are like, what? You don't know how to do this? I'm like, yeah, no, I don't, And it's very humbling at times, but I'm very thankful for them. And I'm also thankful for when they, they deal with me, and, they're nice to me and help me and are kind. And I'm like, boy, you could have been an absolute, like I was when I was a young coach or something, but
We evolve with the times, right?
Absolutely.
We evolve with the times.
Absolutely.
So I know that we're coming up on time.
Yeah.
I know that we're coming up on time. I want to check in with you on two more quick things if we can.
Sure.
If you were to succinctly describe the magic of Detroit Country Day, of the Detroit Country Day experience, how would you describe that?
I think it's the uniqueness of the way that they try to educate, and then the bonding and the family aspect that they're able to kind of bring into that picture. That whole idea of, this isn't going to be a stroll in the park. This is going to be demanding. You're going to have to perform at your best. I always look at this, I guess, maybe in terms of, the teachers that I've known. And I always would tell our, people, the young guys who'd come into the school like as freshmen, didn't go to the middle school and things, weren't exposed. I said, as long as you show them that you're putting everything you got into it and not faking it, they will support you right till the end.
Yeah,
and they will do everything in their power to see that you're going to be successful. And, success is different things. It's based on your abilities in some cases, but they're not going to let you fail. Country Day, that is just what I loved about it. And I had, 5 children who were all very different personalities and learned different ways. And every one of them is so thankful for that experience, particularly when they get to the college level and they can go in there and they have a master, they have a good way to navigate the college environment. And they all went to different schools and everything. But I think, Country Day, that's part of what Country Day got them ready to do. And again, I spoke earlier about that tremendous network of the alums, which is not something that has been, they do a great job now with the alumni, and they're making it more of a priority, but it just happened organically. These kids, from going through these experiences together and being part of Country Day, is such a unique place that there's a lot of pride there, and it's something that they carry with them. And you're always going to be a yellow jacket. That's who you are. And I think about it. I identified so much with my high school experience, but it was I'm just going to be honest. It was more my football experience. My football team experience. Played on a state championship. These guys will be 50 years this year that we won a state, and we're going to have a big reunion. But my wife, when we got together at our 40th or whatever the last one was, she said, you guys act like you've been together. You've never gotten away from it. I said, that's the way it is. It's just so unbelievable. You can pick up right with those guys. And I get that sense from the Country Day kids. There's a shared experience there that is just beautiful. And, just so thankful for it. And, then you look and you play it out. These kids are unbelievably successful. The things that they do, the Jeremys, and not just Jeremys, Benny, I can go through my athletic, and then, there's a whole nother side for what some of these kids have done, in their careers, their business pursuits, their, in medicine and all these great fields. That's Country Day. That's the Country Day impact. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. So, you hit it on the head. I mean, I think they, from an outsider's perspective, looking in, only having had a relationship for a little bit under 4 years with the school, they simply just do a masterful job of defining the standard for excellence, but having so much structure and an abundance of resources to meet every student athlete exactly where their feet are today and help them get there. And I'm just like, how do you do that?
Right.
Like, I've never been at a school with so much ethnic diversity, even socioeconomic diversity, because of some of the programs and the generosity and abundance of the support that exists for a school like that. Right. But I still, at the end of the day, love that every student is a student athlete, because sport is such a great teacher and preparer for life. And it's pretty magical.
No, I agree. I think that is the vision of Mr. Shaw. That is genius in my mind.
Yes, agreed.
I'm just an old football player, but that is great. I give him so much credit. And I've had now dealings with a lot of my colleagues particularly in the public school world, athletic directors.
Yes.
And quietly they'll tell me, well, I wish we could do that. I wish we could have mandatory athletics, because, that's a great learning and proving ground. It's a wonderful thing for kids. And even when they don't want to do it many times, we've had, great athletes in certain individual sports, soccer players who had to, at the time, we had, you had to, when I first came to Country Day, you had to play a sport every season. So you get this guy who was Mr. Soccer, and then he's on the swim team, and he's never been in the water before. And then, he's humbled, but yet he learns.
Yes.
And he makes different relationships with than just all the soccer guys that he's the big dog, and it's just, and Kate Sobrero, who, her I can't remember her married name now, but she went on, played at soccer at Notre Dame, played on the Olympic teams, and Kate Margraf is her married name. Mm-hmm. And she went into the Hall of Fame last year. And she just said, I had to play volleyball. I was soccer year round. I had to play volleyball. And I learned so much. And I wasn't the best player on the volleyball team. And I was, and it's just like, I'm so glad that Country Day made me do that. It made me kind of get in touch with that, So I think that's too, this, one of the issues that we're dealing with now is this specialization. Kids at a young age, that's it. Their sport is their sport, and they're going to do it, and, by and large, a lot of them are out of it before they ever really get started. I think, the multi-sport thing that Country Day preaches is also a very, a great thing as well. So,
last question, Coach. It's been a privilege. Loved it. And I know we could have been here the entire day. But last question. What still needs to be done that you feel like you're waking up every day feeling that it's not yet complete?
I think I kind of spoke to it. I still have that desire. I love what the opportunity that I have, particularly in the coaching area. I love, the athletic director job, and I love to be involved in seeing young people participate in athletics. I think that's wonderful. But, individually, that desire to go out and coach and try to get your team, and build your team to such a level that, particularly us, we didn't have a good year last year. Mm-hmm. We what are you going to do now? How are you going to meet that challenge? Mm-hmm. Are you going to, how are you going to address these things? How are we going to put our team together? Those are exciting things to me still, mm-hmm. And as I said, if I lose that passion and enthusiasm, then it's probably time for me to, head in. But, it still excites me. I've been, I watch these games, I do things, and then, I'll get my little notebook out and say, hey, this is an idea. Like, and I had to say this too. I am so fortunate, the guys that I coach with, because Manny, I am not, your X and O's guru. I coach more from the defensive side. That's where I played and felt comfortable. Yes. My coaches will tell me I hang out way too much. I blitz. I'm aggressive. I go after it. Yeah. Where sometimes a little reason and, control. And so I've got, Jay Will and all those guys, wonderful guys that coach with me, and they get me, under control. Yes. And I'm so fortunate to have those relationships all these years. They look after me. They help me out. Like, Coach, you really don't want to do that. You want to do this. Let's get it, And I look at it more, my main tenets are, the culture of the team, the defensive side, probably the front seven. I'm not a great secondary guy. I've got Dave Furlong and other guys in our program, and I've got Ashton. But it's not about me. It's about us. It's about this group of guys, these group of men that I'm so fortunate to have with me. And so it's a very unique and special environment that you could never put a price tag on. It's much more than that.
That's a great place to end.
Yeah. This was awesome. I loved it.
I loved having you here. I'm like, look, folks, I mean, you just heard an 8-year-old that told his mother he was going to say mass and just whip down to the stadium to put the big rush on. You just heard from a high school student athlete who talked about the complexity and adversity in juggling responsibility and always making the right decision, working his tail off to play sports at a high level, winning a state championship, to then going on to a really respected program, following some NFL greats a decade and a half later, but experience the real life lessons and the agony of defeat, to then getting into my business, selling insurance. I was like, I knew I loved you when I met. I was like, we're connected. I don't know how other than football, but it's the insurance business.
So long.
Love that.
Yeah.
To then following his heart into 4 decades of excellence. We talked about faith. We talked about the significance of family, and we talked about the life-changing vehicle that football can be for so many young men and women now in life.
Yeah.
Coach, it's an absolute privilege. And I will say this in case any of the young men playing next season hear the episode. The tone at the top is fully invest. Not his words, but the way I heard them, and we'll take them forward. Give your maximum effort. Empty the tank. It's called full go. And be willing to play and compete on behalf of your teammates, your school, and the community that you represent. So wishing you nothing but success next season, Coach, and for the rest of your life and the legacy that you're leaving us all behind.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was really great.
Privilege.
Wonderful. I loved it.
Thanks,
I really
Coach.
did. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to my guest, Coach Dan MacLean. Incredible masterclass on faith, family, and football. If you like what you heard today, please be sure to follow, rate, and review At the Podium on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at @podium_podcast. Post about the show on social media, tag us, and we'll do our best to repost it so we can share our gratitude for you and all the listeners in our growing community. Your support means the world to us. And if you enjoy the content and you love our vibe, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button, stay updated, become a part of the growing podcast family. Do me a favor, share it with those you love, care about, and respect. We're all about the rising tide. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.